Greetings. Welcome to the 30th episode of the LAOFCS Weekly radio show, podcast, movie review program. This week we are going to be discussing Detective Pikachu. We're going to be having a short word about Biggest Little Farm. We're going to be talking about the best and worst video game movies ever made. There aren't a lot of those. And we're going to be doing a little bit of a discussion of It Chapter 2, whose preview just dropped, so stay tuned.
Welcome to Popcorn Talk, featuring movie discussion, news, and interviews. Popcorn Talk. We talk movies. And now, here's Popcorn Talk.
Hello. Welcome to Popcorn Talk. My name is Witney Seibold. I'm your host for the week. I am one of the critics for criticallyacclaimed.net, and we have a wonderful, handsome, attractive, and brilliant panel of critics joining me today. We have Mr. Michael Sandoval from Muse TV.
Hey, thank you.
We have Alexander Robinson.
Hello.
Hello. And where do you do your reviews?
You can find me on YouTube, The Real Mr. Robinson, as well as Stardust, Instagram, anywhere else.
Sweet.
And we have
Luis Lecca here with Nuke the Fridge and the Nerd Report here on YouTube.
Thank you for joining me, gentlemen. Thank you for coming. We all have very passionate opinions about Detective Pikachu. But first, there are other films opening this week that will all be trampled by Avengers, but that's another issue.
Including Pikachu.
Probably Detective Pikachu. It's counter-programming for some of the younger kids. But Michael, I understand you saw Biggest Little Farm. I want to talk about that.
Yeah, actually saw it not too long ago, a couple days ago, and it's probably already one of the best documentaries that I've seen this year.
Excellent.
Pretty much it's based on two people who moved from the city, tried to save a farm, and they shot it over 8 years, beautifully shot, and it raises the bar on documentaries again.
Really?
I've noticed over the last 10 years, documentaries have really shined. And this one does the same. Really pulls you in from beginning to end. And STX is the distributor on it, and they did a great job.
What happens in the movie? Like what's the
pretty
struggle?
much it's just the matter of the way of getting the land and getting everything growing, because everything died. They weren't able to grow anything on that land, and it shows the discovery and trying to get that farm built up again.
Okay.
And it's just interesting. It's a very interesting film.
It's like a comment on agriculture.
Yes,
okay.
exactly, and what city life is and how populations are moving into the farmlands and how it's becoming very. It's not as big as it used to be.
Yeah.
Where you used to be able to see, and it's a very good introspective on what's going on nowadays.
Yeah, I've been interested. I'm unfortunately didn't really get to see it, so I was really interested in the topic because I know this whole myth about what a farm looks like.
Right.
You know, the thing you see painted on a mural in your grocery store is completely false, and sort of modern agriculture really interests me, and it's really kind of a pity that I missed this one. None of us saw Tolkien, right?
No.
No, we're familiar with the works of J.R.R. Tolkien, but we didn't actually see the movie yet.
Exactly.
Not yet, though.
We didn't see Palms. We didn't see The Hustle. We didn't see All Is True. We're bad film critics this week, is my point. But we did all see the big release of the week, and that is Pokemon Detective Pikachu. Now, Pokemon Detective Pikachu is the 23rd Pokemon feature film. It is the first, very much like the Power Rangers film, it's the first that was made without the participation of the Japanese originators. It's the first to be filmed in live action. The Pokemon are realized with CGI. And it is maybe one of the most bizarre premises you'll see in any sort of mainstream blockbuster this summer. And they don't bother to explain a damn thing. What did we think of Detective Pikachu?
Do I go first?
Sure, you can go first.
Look, Pokemon's been around for a long time. I even forgot it was part of a video game at this point. I know the cards got real popular working at a collectible show myself. I've seen the kids love it. It's evolved from being really popular to going down and back up again. And when they announced this, I was like, yeah, whatever, I'll just sit down. Good thing for family and just fun, put my brain away. I went to an event full of Pokemon fans. And I got to say, I sat down, the movie started, and I was shocked as how good it was. I'm sorry, it was good. It was really fun.
But before we continue, we'll lay out the premise of the film. It takes place in a parallel universe where there are no animals, but there are Pokemon. And Pokemon, I mean, we know what they are, but to explain, they are super-powered, intelligent animals but they can also be gigantic robots or inorganic golems, just anything that is not a human. Is
Very
essentially
realistic.
is a Pokemon. And some of them look really realistic, but they kept true to the design of the Pokemon from the cartoon and the video game, so some of them have like gigantic spherical heads, and it really kind of throws you off. Into this world, there is a young man who has recently lost his father. His father was a detective. He goes to find out what happened to his father and finds that he can communicate in English with his father's electric mouse, Pikachu, who is voiced by Ryan Reynolds, who wears a cute little deerstalker cap and who is a detective himself. And they have to find out what happened to the missing father.
That's pretty much the movie.
If you had never heard of Pokemon, that would be the weirdest thing imaginable.
Yeah.
So let's speak a little bit more. What do you guys think?
Let's start with the good part of it. The visual effects are really good.
Yeah.
Because they look like the Pokemon from the video games. And Charizard looked like Charizard.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas in Pokemon, the Pikachu looked like Pikachu. And I was like, wow, that looked really good. They put the time and effort into it. It's the story that got... I was kind of lost within the story. I was trying to figure out what is this all about. They show you, but I'm just like, how do we get from point A to point B in this whole film?
That'd be spoilers, though.
Exactly.
Yeah,
It would be
we can't
spoilers.
discuss it right now.
I know, but it's just that A to B just does not make sense.
The premise is not any more sillier than a guy puts on a glove and snaps half the galaxy away. If you really think about it.
But that makes
It's
sense.
not, but I don't know.
Look,
It's still fun.
An evil, like, purple space god craving death stones is something I can wrap my head around.
Yeah.
Right. Well,
The Pokemon Detective Pikachu movie is not going to introduce you to this world in any sort of meaningful way. You're just with it or you're not.
Yeah.
yeah, then that ultimately depends if you grew up with this franchise from the beginning. Because I like the movie, but I feel like the plot's not so much crazy as it is just kind of generic. I feel like it's just an average detective mystery, but what kept it going for me was just the world. I grew up with Pokemon since the trading cards, the anime, so seeing these creatures in a real life setting and for the designs to not be jarring or out of place, it's like, wow, you guys have done this. I just wish you put a little more effort into making a story that's not as predictable or cliched as it ended up being.
I kind of wish it had been more of a detective story. Like there were actually more twists, and you can tell this is directed by a director named Rob Letterman, who did films like Shark Tale and Goosebumps, and he's really good at getting sort of a good kid-friendly tone to his movies. But he's also trying to do something a little bit hard-boiled. But this is hardly hard-boiled.
No.
Even though there's, Pikachu is a hard drinker, but rather than whiskey, it's just coffee. But it's totally bizarre hearing Ryan Reynolds' voice come out of this adorable little creature, rubbing the bridge of his nose, saying, "I need a cup of coffee." It's so jarring. Just every single scene just kind of highlights the weirdness and kind of how dumb this world really is.
Well, I mean,
When you're watching an anime, it's easier to accept because everything's animated.
Yeah.
And the technology just feels a little bit more natural. It's really, really stylized. So I'm able to accept that there are people walking around with superpowered animals held in spheres on their belts, and they do these superpowered cockfights. But here, I need a little bit more context. I want a little bit of a better introduction if you're going to start reintroducing all of these characters in live action.
I kind of like the fact that there was no explanation of how the Pokemon came to existence in our world, and I think that would have taken away from the movie if we had an entire and 100 years ago these aliens or whatever. I don't know what the heck it is. I kind of like the fact that we're just thrown in.
And see, this is the thing. I grew up... Pokemon came out when I was already in college.
Yeah, same.
So I would like a little explanation on how this all started because the cartoons never really explained it.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
So...
But again, when you're starting with an animated Saturday morning cartoon program, and dubbed as we grew up watching that, I watched them, but it feels a little bit more natural. That's just the premise.
Right.
And I feel like this film is taking for granted the fandom, that people are already going to be with this going in. And I think as a result, it's a weaker as a piece of cinema.
I can kind of see that, and part of the thing I feel like might contribute to that is that this is actually based off one of the video games, Detective Pikachu, which is one of the most boring and weakest games in the entire franchise. So even with me liking this world that they built, it still boggled my mind for the first Pokemon movie you're going to make in live action. Why one of the weakest games? Huh? Like, it just didn't really click with me. And Ryan Reynolds, I found distracting throughout the first, I'd say, half of the movie, because I kept thinking of a PG Deadpool. Huh?
Yeah. Well, he's
pretty
bringing
much.
that his same sort of snarky sense of humor, and that's his greatest strength as a performer. So fine. I think why they chose. Yeah, again, this is a weird one to start with, just because Detective Pikachu is such a strange idea. Pikachu's a strange idea as is. Detective Pikachu doubly so. And it feels like they're trying to give us sort of a soft walk into the world of Pokemon. Maybe Paramount wasn't really ready yet.
Warner Brothers.
Excuse me, Warner Brothers. Pardon me. wasn't willing yet to go straight on into like a $250 million Pokemon. This is the world. We're going to introduce everything. We're going to set that would be too busy, I think. So they're going to focus on a detective story. But this world needs that. This world is so weird. I need something a little bit more expansive.
It's like Blade Runner.
I suppose.
Did you just compare Pokemon to Blade Runner?
Yeah.
I mean,
It's like,
It's funner than Blade Runner.
but there was a base. There was a base with Blade Runner.
Well, and
Pokemon didn't really have a base to work off.
Yeah,
of.
well, and Blade Runner has spent a lot of time establishing things. Whether or not you like it, there's an introduction in one of the cuts where he kind of talks about everything that's going on. A lot of people hate that narration, but whatever. But yeah, it sort of eases you into the world of Blade Runner, and we kind of see where these people live before we kind of get into the story proper. This, we're just dropped right in. A car is blown up, and then we're with our main characters, and they're catching a Cubone out in a field. And, like, what is a Cubone? Why is there a dinosaur? What is the advantage of having one? Something that they've always talked about in all of the other anime. I've seen 22 of the anime films, by the way, so I'm not inexperienced.
Okay,
But one of the things they talk about is sort of this special relationship that human owners have with their Pokemon, and how it's this kind of very intimate, semi-psychic, I guess, kind of soul bonding between these two creatures. I was reminded of the Daemons in the Golden Compass, if you guys ever saw that movie. It's sort of
barely
like
remember it.
They have these soul animals that can kind of speak to them, and I'm guessing that's kind of what a Pokemon is getting at. And they give lip service to that in Detective Pikachu, like a human and a Pokemon can have a very special relationship. Well, what does that mean? And what does it mean that you have one, and what does it mean that you don't have one? The main character, whose name we haven't even said because he's not that interesting, he's a loner. He prefers to be alone, and that seems like he's doing fine with that. The only disadvantage is he works in insurance, and everybody else finds that to be incredibly boring. Well, what if he wants to work in insurance? What if that's okay for him? Him having a Pikachu doesn't seem to improve or hurt his life in any sort of way. It's just finding his father that's the important thing.
Right. Exactly. And there's that girl who plays a reporter who it's like, she got kind of annoying to me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, pretty much.
The main character is played by Justice Smith, by the way, and the girl reporter is played by an actress named Catherine Newton, who was in Ben is Back.
Yeah.
And blockers.
I had a
And she was very good in Blockers.
I had a blast during the film, though. I loved it. I didn't get for what it is. I mean, it's pocket monsters.
And that could be for another show.
monsters.
Yeah.
Well, isn't that what Pokemon stands for?
That's
pretty much.
what's in Japanese.
Yeah.
I got that.
But weirdly enough, when they translated it into English, they turned it into Pokemon, and that's not the Japanese title. Yeah.
I was shocked as how visually stunning it was, as far as like it was shot on film, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was awesome. I think Warner Brothers or New Line, whoever it is, is it
Warner Brothers and Legendary.
Legendary. I think they really try to go all out with it. I'm shocked that, I mean, maybe it's not our demo, but I think they tried to do give respect to the fans and stuff like that, almost to the point of that they don't really explain the stuff, catering to the fans, so a fan would probably know what's going on.
Yeah.
I don't know. You've seen 136 Pokemon films already, so I was along for the ride, and I had a good time.
Same here. I mean, because that's what I thought when seeing the movie. It very much doesn't introduce anything, and for me, being a fan since the beginning, I was okay with it because I just could fill in the blanks of how the world functions and like the Pokemon partners and like, oh, this is the very first Pokemon you got and you grew up with it. So I was kind of filling in the blanks. But for anyone who hasn't seen, like, isn't attached to the franchise from the beginning, I could definitely see how it can scratch some heads.
And that's one of the what happened to me during my screening, right? Is I saw there were people that were really hardcore into it, and they were just like going crazy at parts, and I was just enjoying it for them. I just love the cinematic experience when people are just into it. Except this guy right here.
I am a Pokemon fan going back to at least age 20 or so when it sort of introduced into my life. I can explain the circumstances as to why I got into Pokemon, but it's not interesting. But yeah, Pokemon is really absurd, and I appreciate that. So not just Pokemon, but this is just a big trend in cinema in general. Avengers Endgame is also the same way. Studios are now looking online and joining in fan communities and finding out exactly what fans want to see. And they're giving them exactly what fans want to see, and they're making huge amounts of money doing that. And I think fans might have a little too much clout in dictating what they want to see in feature films. The same can be said of the Sonic the Hedgehog preview. I had a discussion about this recently on my podcast. Yeah, you guys are shaking your head. It's a terrible idea. Don't make a film of Sonic the Hedgehog. If you're going to try to make an interesting story out of it, and thirdly, if fans don't like the way you designed the creature, don't go back at the last minute in a panic and redesign the creature. That's your movie.
Yeah,
you should be able to design Sonic the Hedgehog. I think it looks terrible. I think it looks like a horrendous monster, but it's not up to me to choose that. It's up to the director, and I think we should leave filmmakers a little bit more leeway to make a version of a fan-friendly thing, the way they want. I mean, a lot of people sort of bristle, the first X-Men film, they changed all of the outfits. They're changing all of this thing from the source material.
It's true.
Those first two X-Men films are pretty excellent, and I like the changes.
They are really good.
I like that we could have a film version of the thing rather than just the film of the same thing, if that makes sense.
That makes sense, because I think the most important thing, going back to X-Men, is that, they make a lot of changes, but the spirit of the original comics is still there, and that translates into two very good first movies. And if I could go back to Sonic the Hedgehog, like the design is probably one of the least, the things I was concerned about the least, just because the trailer looked terrible. And I'm not saying you can't do a Sonic the Hedgehog movie, but if you're going to do one, make it animated, because we're going back to the days of Garfield or Alvin and the Chipmunks with this movie here. And when studios are in a panic, like trying to redesign the look after the trailer came out, that's just not... It's not a good sign of faith.
They don't have any faith in this product.
There's a segment on the internet right now actually praising the director for listening to the fans. That's another side of the coin, maybe.
But as a critic, and I've said this numerous times on various outlets, but as a critic, I'm not really concerned with what fans want. I mean, when I go into a movie, I want the kind of movie that I didn't know I wanted. I don't want necessarily to be catered to. I don't want to be pandered to. A lot of people do. A lot of people, in fact, that's the whole raison d'etre for Pokemon Detective Pikachu. We're just going to have a feature film that Pokemon fans are going to love. And you know what? Pokemon fans are going to love it. It has that same kind of kid-like absurdity that we just sort of roll with when we're kids. And heck knows I saw a lot of crap like that when I was a kid and really loved them.
Oh yeah, we all have.
I could name many movies that were like
I'm 40. I was raised on like the garbage TV of the 1980s, and I watched He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. It's crap. Don't go back. It's terrible.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
You're 40?
I know.
That's from the...
I look 50.
That's from Family Guy. You guys remember that? Oh my God. You're 40?
So I appreciate that, the studios are finally doing what fans have been clamoring for, the 20 years before they started doing this, and in the last 20 years they have been, and you're kind of doing the film version of exactly what's in the comics. And during that span, I stopped wanting that. So I'm watching something like Detective Pikachu, thinking, okay, this is good for a Pokemon fan, but this isn't a good movie. This is absurd and it's dumb. It's just stupid crap, and I'm not really on its wavelength. Even though it's perfectly well made, it's colorful, it's got good design, the script is followable. There's not anything objectively wrong with the filmmaking. It's just the concept is so dumb, and the filmmakers are throwing themselves so foolhardily into it that I'm just being pushed out. I know I'm probably in the minority here.
Okay,
but-
so what? Let me ask you guys that are familiar with Pokemon. What's a complex Pokemon story that you would have liked to have seen?
The problem is that Pokemon's actually not that complex.
Bingo! So if you're making it, mission accomplished.
I mean, I can definitely see where you're coming from because, again, I had issues with it being just a standard detective mystery, and I already talked about how doing Detective Pikachu was kind of a bizarre idea in the first place. But I mean, Pokemon is pretty simple. I'm not gonna go in the mindset of like, if I made the movie, this is what I would have done, because I don't like being in that mindset. I just love watching the movie, and if it's bad, it's bad. If I like it, then hey, I like it.
Okay.
That's fine.
Fair.
I'll leave.
And anything else you guys wanted to say about Detective Pikachu?
Pika Pika. I'm a big fan of this place, and I've always wanted to do that.
I give it 4-star use.
What do you guys give it? Like, do you guys do 1 to 10 or anything?
No, I think the discussion says it. But
Yeah.
if you're more comfortable giving it a rating, what would you
Recommendation,
say?
maybe?
Like if I'm giving it a rating, I'm giving it like a 6, 7.
So, okay.
I'd probably say 7 as well. I mean, before coming in here, I had a review on my own channel, and my custom rating system, I said it's good but not great,
Okay.
and that's just what it is for me.
Okay.
I give it a 7 for general audience, and an 8 if you're a kid, maybe a fan. And I think it's going to give Avengers a run for its money this weekend.
Well, that is a bold statement, sir.
We'll be back here next week. We'll see.
Says the man in the Happy Hogan shirt.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, he's wearing his Avengers
Yeah.
T-shirt.
Favorite character?
He's the one who he's the director who kind of started everything.
Yeah,
so
and he's the one that's over 40, and I can relate to that. And he's a little chubby.
Now, moving on in our discussion, Detective Pikachu is, I guess we can all agree, is like when compared to the litany of films that have been based on video games, and there have been several dozen at this point, and there are very, very few that are even watchable, much less good. Where do you think it falls on that spectrum? Because in any objective measure, I'd say it falls on the high end of that spectrum.
Right. It really does, because I automatically, when I think of video game movies, I'm thinking Super Mario Brothers. And how bad that movie was.
I love Super Mario Brothers. Unironically, I love Super Mario Brothers.
When
Interesting.
King Koopa does not look like a
Doesn't look like
lizard.
Bowser.
Yeah,
He looks
exactly.
like Dennis Hopper.
Yeah.
That's better.
Well, I was a kid when I saw it. I wanted the video game.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted, and I didn't get that.
We had the Super Mario Brothers Super Show on TV, and that is also garbage. And I'd rather have this weird steampunk Hollywood artificiality where they altered everything, because that seems like a more intelligent way to go about it. Something as bizarre as Super Mario Brothers.
But Pikachu's a higher rated film than a lot of the video game films that are out there. I think it definitely ranks higher than what I've seen. I mean, the Resident Evil series, good or bad, were shot very well. It had some things, but
mostly bad.
But mostly bad,
True.
exactly.
But-
In comparison, it actually is higher. You see that you're hoping that whenever they take a video game adaptation, that they get that next step and it keeps growing and it becomes something better. Like hopefully like an Uncharted, since you've been talking about that, and hopefully that will be the next big step.
I just want a good movie, frankly.
Yeah.
So what's the best video game movie that you've seen outside of Detective Pikachu?
Damn, I don't know. I've been thinking about this since for a couple hours now, and I don't think there is one, to be honest.
Did you see Rampage or Tomb
I did see
Raider?
Rampage. Did not like Rampage.
Oh, okay.
Because it's a video game that just pretty much all you did was tear down buildings and eat the people inside, and that's it.
That's great.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
but the movie was just not. I love The Rock. I like seeing The Rock, but it just wasn't anything that.
Okay.
did
I know
anything.
him personally. He has rock posters all over his room.
Yeah,
Okay.
pretty much. Yeah. I've been trying for years to get the people's eyebrow, and I just can't.
Come now, who doesn't? Let's see. Let's all do it.
I just can't.
Can you smell what critics are cooking?
I don't know what camera were we supposed to leave
Exactly.
Just any of them.
All right. I would, going back to Rampage before Detective Pikachu, I would say that was probably the standard for me in terms of video game movies. I mean, I'm not gonna say it's good, but I have a soft spot for giant monsters destroying cities, and Dwayne Johnson obviously has a ton of charisma, and I think for me it works in the same way the first Pirates of the Caribbean worked. I'm not saying they're the same. I'm not saying they're in the same league, but the first Pirates of the Caribbean, sure. But what I mean is, like, the first Pirates of the Caribbean movie didn't really have anything to do with the ride, whereas Rampage barely had anything to do with the game. Like, the monsters were like their characters in name only.
Yeah.
So it was kind of allowed to be its own thing. It was just Rampage in name only, and I had fun with it.
I agree. I thought Rampage and Tomb Raider, both not great films, were sort of at least a step in the right direction. Because before this, the high water marks were what? Mortal Kombat was often cited, and Resident Evil by the same director. These were the two films that were considered the best ones. If Mortal Kombat is the best of anything, you're in a really bad place. Because Mortal Kombat isn't a good movie.
No.
But the music
It's
was
really
good.
confusing.
That theme song
The-
was good.
The soundtrack is great,
Yeah.
but it came out in the 90s when you could have a trash film with a great soundtrack.
Right, exactly.
Dead Man on Campus has a great soundtrack.
As far as like the worst, I've always been disappointed with Resident Evil. I know maybe undeservingly, because just to know that the great George Romero was supposed to direct the first one, and somehow that fell
He
apart.
was?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
And,
wow.
And then kind of like I love the video game, and then I felt like the movie wasn't like the video game enough. I know you like when they go a little different. I want to say as far as best video game movies, I know this is kind of not a video game, but it went from movie to video game. Is I love Tron. I just want to say Tron because Tron does not get. For me, it's a video game turned into a movie because I started with playing the video game first.
The arcade game.
Yeah, the arcade game. So that's the way I go. And that Mario Brothers movie. Wow.
Yeah.
John Leguizamo was cool. But,
Great, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, but
That wonderful Mario Brothers movie. The worst video game adaptation I've seen was probably the sequel to Silent Hill. It's called Silent Hill Revelation, Silent
Revolution,
Hill
I
of
think.
Revolutions, Silent Hill
Saw that.
Apocalypse,
Yeah,
one of
saw that.
those. Silent Hill Endgame. And it's again, it's based on this really strange video game premise, which maybe when you're playing a game it makes sense, where you go into a haunted city and it's completely abandoned during the day and then it's haunted at night. But like it's only haunted in a parallel dimension at night, and it's really confusing. It kind of makes sense when you watch the feature film. Second one just sort of throws you into this big mishmash of violent imagery and difficult to follow plots and uninteresting stories. So it just is really, really painful to watch. It's just badly made. None of us has mentioned Uwe Boll yet, how he for the better part of the 2000s was churning out film after film based on video games, and how notoriously terrible pretty much each one of them was.
I think the reason why I can't mention too many bad video game movies is because, quite frankly, as soon as the credits start rolling, I forgot. I forgot I saw it. This was a very different. We were sent the topics a few days ago, and it was kind of a difficult topic to cover for me because I was like, what video game movies have I seen? And then so I started researching. Like, I've seen all these films, but I just forgot what they were about. I forgot what they were about because they're done on the cheap. They don't respect the source material enough, I believe, and they use the name. That's just my take on it. I mean, I love Pikachu. I like Pikachu.
Yeah.
I love Pikachu.
Hey guys, I can chime in from the booth. You want to talk about bad video game movies? What about Street Fighter the movie?
Street Fighter the movie. Okay.
Starring in the final movie with what's his name?
Raul Julia.
Raul Julia, yeah. Of course.
I watched the first time I saw Street Fighter the movie. It was right after I actually brought them home from the video store and watched them back to back. It was right after I had finished watching Double Dragon with Scott Wolf and Alyssa Milano and Robert Patrick. And that's colorful. It's like a Saturday morning cartoon, like just gone wrong, and just everything's terrible about it. And after that, when you see the relatively slick production and better thought out version of Street Fighter, it feels kind of okay. So I ended up walking away from Street Fighter saying, that wasn't bad.
Exactly, and Jean-Claude Van Damme looked like...
Yeah, the actors were all having a great time.
They looked
That-
like
Ming-Na
they
Wen
had
is having
fun.
a great time. Yeah.
That has a cult following, by the way.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of people.
At the very least, it's better than the second time they made a Street Fighter movie, Legend of Chun-Li.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
That's what.
That's true.
That's what
That's
I'm
true.
pretty sure I saw. I think, but I totally forgot.
Christian
about.
Crook is so cute, though.
Well, that's the way I am with Double Dragon and Alyssa Milano.
Oh,
Yeah.
It's like-
Or Scott Wolf.
I have an honorable mention. I want to ask the panel, what did they think? Does Pixels count as a video game since it's in everyone?
Sure.
Pac-Man.
Yeah, why not?
I thought that was okay. I think it got real bad reviews. Some deserving, some not. The criticism, but it was okay.
Worse reviews than it deserved.
Yeah, yeah, you agree?
Yeah.
Finally, we agree on something.
I would say it's not based off a video game because it was based off a short film that just happened to be based off video games. Actually, no, you might have a point right there.
Do I win today's show?
Maybe.
The best thing about Pixels was clearly Peter Dinklage because did you guys see the documentary film The King of Kong: A Fistful of Quarters?
Yes, I
about
saw that one.
the rivalry between Steve Wiebe and Billy Mitchell, these two Donkey Kong champions, and the drama in competitive Donkey Kong competitions.
Yeah.
Peter Dinklage in that movie was playing Billy Mitchell. Like the look and his attitude was from that film, and that was kind of a cute little wink to people who follow the video game world.
Has anyone made a movie on that? You said it's a documentary?
Yeah, it's a documentary.
Yeah.
Oh,
called-
interesting.
I'm
I'm
not
gonna
sure.
check that one out.
Surely somebody's working on like a fictionalized version of that somewhere.
That'd be interesting.
But yeah.
It was really good. It was really good.
Potential that could be the best video game movie.
King of Kong might be one of the better video game movies because it's about the mechanics of playing the game and what
Yeah.
the world of video game, like living in the world of video games. And because of the age I am, I find arcade cabinets to be sort of more where the video game world is rather than the stuff you play at home, which is what billions of people do instead.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then maybe you guys could let me know if I'm wrong here, but I saw someone do a YouTube video on the creator of Tetris. That would be an insane film. The guy was from Russia.
Yeah,
and he never
really?
got any monetization for it, or
Because
very
the
little.
state owned the game for a little while there. Yeah, it was owned by the Russian government, so it was this big,
Yeah.
big sort of corporate deal as to how they could bring it over to America, and they don't know who really had the rights, and I think a lot of the money ended up going into the Russian, like the Soviet government.
That'd be a great film. So
That would be
legendary, if you're watching,
No,
take a
that's
cut.
that's Spielberg's next film. You know,
That'd
like
be
his really terse the Post style drama about the politics behind Tetris.
And Tom
He could
Hanks
do
will be
that.
in it.
Yeah, as the American or as the Russian.
I don't know.
I don't know.
The best video game movie I've ever seen, I had to look it up, was an anime film from 2009 called Professor Layton and the Eternal Diva. And this is a film nobody saw. I think it played in a theater in Los Angeles for a week. And you can find it on like anime streaming services. I think it's on like Crunchyroll. But it was based on a game for, I think, the Game Boy Advance. And it was a sort of point-and-click detective game. And they turned it into a detective-style story where a bunch of masterful detectives were brought in together by a supervillain saying, "Solve my puzzles." It was kind of like Saw in a way, but really much more kid-friendly.
nice.
But with more of an Agatha Christie vibe. And yeah, Professor Layton was very stern. He had a boy sidekick, and they just solved problems. And it was actually really well told and really intriguing and funny and light. It was a really well put together film. It's probably the best film I've seen to have been based on a video game.
Interesting.
I'll
Yeah,
check that one out.
And of course, I think you have to be sort of a deep cut anime person to understand some of this stuff. But it's
You'd be surprised, personally, and maybe you guys have felt the same. Have you guys ever gone to watch a movie and not know anything about the source material, but the movie was so good that you go home and you just do your own research and like you become a fan of whoever the movie was about or the source? Does that ever happen to you?
let me think about that. I'm sure it's happened a couple times before.
It's happened for me a couple of times, but usually there's a giant Marvel logo in front of it.
It was Bohemian Rhapsody for me because I wasn't
Oh,
into
there
Queen.
you go. Yeah.
I know a lot of people say that it's not really accurate to the real life. But the movie, I loved it so much that I went home and I started researching it and stuff like that. I just thought I'd share that with
I
you
think
guys.
that happened with me and Repo Man. I started looking into like LA punk rock and the hardcore scene a little bit more after I had seen Repo Man. Kind of interested in that music and that scene.
Yeah, me it was Sound City because since they recorded so many bands at that recording studio like Fleetwood Mac and Nirvana had recorded there and such other bands, I used to, after I saw the movie, I actually drove by there just to see what it was like and to see what that vibe was, because it's so interesting and it's so legendary that it's like it's one of those things where I had to do the research to see what it all about.
Okay.
I can't like as a serious answer, I can't think of one off the top of my head.
Just as the best.
Well, in terms of like movies where I knew nothing and then liked it so much that I went to do a bunch of research on it.
Like,
Well, I want to watch the Donkey Kong more. I want to learn more about that Donkey Kong.
the Donkey Kong documentary.
Now
is
you
really
think about
terrific.
it, I remember that in Pixels. So
And if you watch Pixels right after, you'll see exactly what Peter Dinklage is doing, and it's
no,
really,
I'm not
really
gonna watch it
spectacular.
after.
Oh well.
One time.
I think that's all we have to really say about video game movies. There's not.
I think you're right. Fan service could be a double-edged sword. Is if you go too far, some stuff may not translate into film. But I also think that the fan base should always be respected. If you're using the name, of the IP. You should give it a chance and stuff like that. And besides, studios have test screenings all the time. What better testing is than the people who have paid $60 a video game?
Exactly.
They're going to pay $10 to watch the movie.
True.
Here's a question that I want to put to you. A lot of video game fans have been sort of worried about the way video games have been represented in film. There are no good video game films. You hear it said a lot in sort of online discourse. And a lot of video game fans are concerned about that because they feel that the larger film audience is getting a bad representation of their favorite hobby. And I'm wondering if video games, which are such a huge industry now, they make almost as much money as movies. More so. Yeah, they're selling consoles. There's this huge online community. There's YouTube channels and Let's Play videos. And
people make a living off of Let's Plays.
Exactly. Yeah, the video games is just as big a world as movies. Does a video game need a movie to be legitimized in the eye of the public?
I would say no, because you can always, if you've been looking for something, let me start that again. If you're looking forward to a video game being translated to a movie and it's not good, then you could always go back to the game. It's just like with, if they remake a movie, that remake might not be very good, but you still have the original, so nothing's really lost in that sense.
Well, in a way, there is something lost because, when you say I love Halloween, now you have to distinguish not between two, but by three films now called Halloween.
Yeah.
And whenever you bring up John Carpenter's 1978 classic, it's now colored by the fact that these other two films have sort of elbowed their way into the conversation. And I think maybe the same is true of like video game players and the movies. It's like, oh, I really, really love Resident Evil. Oh, like the movie. No, nothing like the movie. Like, you have to distinguish that the games are sort of this own thing. And I think this is a concern for video game fans.
I think it should be the other way around. I think, it's first a video game and all support the video games have received over the years. I think the movies should respect that a little more. I wasn't creeped out by Resident Evil. I was creeped out playing the video game, though. And that's where it lost. Because, remember playing that game on the first PlayStation? How creepy it was and how new it was to my friends. Like, dude, you're gonna get scared playing this. I'm like, yeah, right. I'm like, dude, yeah, I was scared. All the zombies lurking and stuff, and then the movie was just not that, so I think if the movie was a little bit more that, I would have liked it. I know it has a fan base, but
Right.
Well, I think a big issue is that a lot of the video game adaptation, like you look at video games, you look at something like Resident Evil, you look at your Metroids and your Zeldas. A lot of these things are kind of inspired by B movies anyway.
yeah.
Metroid is inspired by Alien. So if you're going to make a Metroid film, unfortunately the games have been going on for so long that they have these gigantic expansive mythologies. and filmmakers are making the mistake of trying to incorporate the entire mythology in the first film, when really they might do better to go back to its B-movie origins and make a B-movie out of it. Make a with a cast of 3 people and 4 sets, and kind of capture the spirit of the first game and expand from there the same way the game series did. But this is me giving studio notes to something I have no control over. So.
But I agree with you on that. I think simplifying the story, taking one of the video games or one of the stories and simplifying it and building off of like the first video game that was released would probably be better than trying to expand the whole world, 8 video games, maybe 10 video games into one. World of Warcraft was one of those games where it's so expansive, and how do you pull that into a story?
And that film was a mess as a result. They can't focus on they have to incorporate all of these things that people know from the games, and now and games are now like bigger and more elaborate than movies could ever be.
Right.
It's like even when you take the game portion out and just watch the cut scenes, it's like you have 10, 20, 100-hour miniseries just within the game itself.
right.
So how do you distill that into a 2 or 3 hour feature film? You can't. So I think it's sort of a losing proposition. So that we've gotten any tolerable video game movies at all is kind of a great thing.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Anyway, sorry, I don't mean to dictate the conversation.
Oh, that's fine.
One thing I'll add to that is I think if video game movies are going back to your argument about who did you say about making the games more simple when it comes to
making the translation from a game to a movie, just simplifying it a little bit.
Yeah, that's I think if we're gonna get more video game movies in the future, that's the way we need to go. Start out with a game that has a very simple premise, even if you have to go far back as the '80s, like you said, Metroid. Don't do something like Grand Theft Auto, which is so it's so complicated and so big that. Something like that probably would work better as a TV series. If you have something simple, straight to the point, then it would probably be easier to do as a first film, and then you can expand with more of what the games had to offer.
But wasn't everyone here kind of complaining that Detective Pikachu was too basic, 30 minutes ago?
I didn't say basic. I said generic.
I didn't say basic.
Generic?
I just said the story wasn't good.
People in the comments are probably going, oh. These guys are going to fight now. Pika Pika.
You can call me whatever rude names you like. Look up new rude names. I can take it. It's
They're
fine.
all nice. Use the delete button.
You're all wonderful people.
Yeah.
So I think that's all we have to say about video game movies. Or at the very least, we should probably move on. One of our topics of discussion this week was going to be the preview for It Chapter 2.
Ooh, yes.
The second part of the It saga.
Could I take this off and put it on my nose? Like a clown?
I'll walk out of this studio right now.
Follow your heart. That's what I have to say.
I'll be creeped
do
out.
what you like. But yeah, the first It, in 1990, Stephen King's novel It was adapted into a miniseries with Tim Curry as a really horrendous clown who stalked children, and we kind of got to see them, the effects of being stalked by a monster, how that sort of rippled into their adult lives.
Yeah.
And the book is the same way. The first film, the feature film based on It that came out 2 years ago, 2017, was just about the childhood experience, about them being stalked by clowns. We didn't get any flash forwards to what it looked like as an adult until now. The second part is now going to be the same characters 30 years later as adults in the present day, dealing with the consequences of the trauma they suffered.
Yeah.
Right.
27 years to be exact, because I believe It comes every 27 years.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I don't remember the exact number, but
Yeah.
I know they transposed it because the book came out in the 1980s, and Stephen King set the kids section in the 1950s. And so if you're going to set the adult world in the modern day, you go back 30 years, comes back in the 1980s.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Interesting.
They just sort of transposed everything forward a couple decades. Were you guys fans of the first It?
Oh,
I
yeah.
was, yes.
Yeah, Star Wars move over. It is chapter 2. I've said this, and I'll say it again, and I'm glad to be on this platform and say it, is for horror movies, I think It, to me, is the Star Wars for horror, the equivalent, as far as anticipation and stuff. It's epic. It's about the friendship with the kids. And I tell people, it's a fantasy fellowship, almost like Fellowship of the Ring type of thing for me, because a lot of people are like, oh, no, I'm scared of clowns. I don't want to see it. It's like, I think it's more about the relationship and the fantasy than the horror aspect of it. I'm so excited.
I could kind of see that because it definitely had some Stranger Things vibes to it outside of one of the kid actors being in it.
Right.
But yeah, it was a big surprise for me because I'm not a fan of that miniseries. Like for my age range, everyone loves it, but me, it's just like, this is goofy. So the movie creeped me out, and Bill Skarsgård, he definitely stole the show as Pennywise and just creeped me out so much. And this trailer it's giving me more of those creepy vibes, and I'm hoping it sticks the landing.
Okay.
Well, the best thing about it is that me and Lewis were at CinemaCon, and we saw that scene that they've cut in the beginning of the trailer. We saw the full scene.
Just the scene, not the feature film.
No, just the scene, that beginning scene that they show in the trailer, and oh my God, it's creepy. Like the full scene, that if that was creepy, the full scene is even creepier.
I can tell you that the old woman's not blurred out.
No.
You know the part.
Yeah.
It was good, and the reaction from the people in there, and Warner Brothers presentation at CinemaCon. It's my first CinemaCon. I don't know if you guys been, but I really recommend you guys going. Was such an awesome experience. But Warner Brothers presentation, they had so many good things to show that I forgot half of them, but it stayed with me because it gave me chills. Everyone looked at each other like, wow, and it was extended like a minute more,
right?
Which is a lot, you know. So this is the poop's gonna hit the fan.
Yeah, and people were talking when we were walking out of the Coliseum at Caesar's Palace. People were talking about it.
And the Joker, it and Joker. So we have two clowns coming.
Yeah,
interesting.
Hooray, scary clowns.
Warner Brothers is going to be overrun by them.
I think it is great in a crowd. It's one of those films that has like a lot of fun haunted house type imagery that is fun to sort of like leap into a date's arms over. That said, it's like sort of a thrill rather than proper scary. Like I wasn't really scared of the clown. I was just sort of entertained by the clown. I think what it did best was the kid stuff. All of the relationship, what you were saying about sort of these kids having a relationship. Their relationship, their banter, their reaction to all of this was really nice. I feel like a lot of the story was rushed. I don't like that they just sort of beat the clown to death with baseball bats at the end. Because one of the conceits in the book that they put in the miniseries was they had a silver coin. They understood that the way to kill a monster is to hit it with a silver bullet. So they had a silver coin, and they melted it down into a little ball, and they put it in a slingshot. And that's sort of using their own childhood totems to destroy this childhood monster, essentially a closet monster. And that was really interesting to me. And one of the characters, he says that his inhaler tasted like battery acid. And he approached the clown and said, "This is battery acid." He sprayed it on the clown and it burned it. And so it was kind of using the childhood imagination and the fact that they're really separated off from the adult world to fight this thing that nobody believes them about. And I feel like the film was a little bit too straightforward. It's like we're just going to go into the sewers and beat it up. Like, well, and, you know, they all float. Well, okay, they're floating, but what does that signify? What does that mean? I feel like it was a little weirdly edited, but I can't deny that I was thrilled while watching it, and how a lot of hearing all of the people around you sort of scream and squirm does make the film a lot more fun. I think when you're alone in a room by yourself, it's not going to be quite as scary, ironically enough.
I haven't seen it since it was in theaters, so I'm curious how rewatching it alone would be.
I've watched it a few times. I think it holds up for me. One thing that I hope the internal research division at the studio, because believe me, they do have research. These are multi-million-dollar things. I hope it's showing them that jump scares aren't as fun anymore, because I'm done with them. A few is okay, but it's like they're getting too formulaic at this point. I feel the first It had a few almost borderline too many jump scares. The footage, though, had no jump scares. Or maybe, like, just slightly hit.
Slight.
And it's creepier. And if you guys ever watch The Haunting of Hill House on Netflix, there's not that many jump scares in it, and it is creepy as heck.
You're talking about the series, The Haunting of Hill House.
Yeah.
Not The Haunting or the feature film.
Not the feature film. No, not the Liam Neeson one, right?
So, yeah, there was.
What is the one on Netflix? I think it's The Haunting of Hill House, the one that just came out last year. But anyways, Jump scares, I think, need to be cut down on. And what's most promising about this footage was that it didn't feel like jump scary.
Okay.
You guys like jump scares or no?
No.
Only when they're done well.
But there's just too many.
And that's where, like, for me, after seeing that once extended scene, it reminded me a little bit of The Shining. Even the color scheme with that avocado paint and then with the lady running around naked. It's like there's something about a Stephen King film with naked old ladies that are very scary. And it's nothing bad. I don't mean, but I remember in The Shining seeing that and it freaking me out. Because it's like she looks normal and then all of a sudden she's decayed in another state. And it reminded me back to when I was a kid watching The Shining.
Could be the first.
A movie none of us should have seen as kids, but we did anyway.
Exactly.
Could this be the first $1 billion horror film? 700 million the first film.
I honestly don't care. I want a good film. I don't care how much money it
But
makes.
see, well, hold on. I want good films to make money so they can make more good films. If crappy films make $1 billion, and we get more crappy films.
It's gonna make money because it had the highest opening weekend for a horror movie, and I don't think it's gonna hit $1 billion because because it's rated R, so there will be some restrictions for some people to go unless they have to sneak in, which please don't do that. So I just don't see it cracking $1 billion.
Why are you looking at Mike when you talk about sneaking in?
I'm looking at our audience right there.
I
who
think
should
you're
know better.
Well, because in the 80s we used to do that.
If you're going to sneak in, buy a ticket for like a little tiny indie film that deserves the ticket revenue, and then sneak into the blockbuster that doesn't.
There you go.
That's the practice.
Right.
Not that I would encourage that, but I encourage. No, I'm not encouraging that at all.
Do not do that.
No.
So you're not concerned that there's no more kids anymore in this second chapter? It's all just a new adult cast?
They're going to be there. The kids are going to be there. They were actually present at CinemaCon pushing the film with their older counterpart. So I think there's going to be a lot of the kids from the original film. And that is very concerning because the kids were so likable. If you like it, the kids, the acting was so likable that the adults, I don't care who they get, Oscar winning, whatever. It's going to be hard to say, okay, this person that you like so much is now this person. So I think that's going to be a big obstacle for Chapter 2 to surpass the first film as far as likability. But I think they're going to do it. There's a lot. It's already written. It's a already written story. And Stephen King's the best. So we're gonna. I think it's gonna do well.
It's the only Stephen King book I've read, so I'm looking forward to sort of seeing the adaptation. Anyway, that's our show for this week. Tell our wonderful, lovely, sexy viewers who you are and where they can find you.
Yeah, don't forget, I guess I will start down this way. Mike Sandoval, Muse TV. Check us out on YouTube and musetv.net, and we have some new shows coming up, so stay tuned.
All right,
Fantastic.
You find me, Alexander Robinson, on YouTube and Instagram, The Real Mr. Robinson, Twitter, Real Mr. _Robinson, and Stardust, Real Mr. Robinson.
And my name is Luis Lecca. You can find me on nukethefridge.com, The Nerd Report, or Nerd Report on YouTube, and at your nearest, wherever they're serving lunch.
And my name is Witney Seibold. I co-host Canceled Too Soon and the critically acclaimed podcast. You can find my writings at criticallyacclaimed.net, occasionally IGN.com, and you can find me on Twitter and insult me there. I'd like to encourage all of our panel and all of our viewers to look into Malton Fest, which is coming up on May 11th and 12th. That's at the Egyptian Theater in Hollywood, California. He's showing Bela Lugosi Meets a Brooklyn Gorilla and some other films as well. That's the one I'm concerned with.
He's a legend
though.
right there, Leonard.
Yeah, Leonard Maltin is the elder statesman of our craft. So we all admire what he's doing. He has his own festival now. It's great. And he and his family have put it all together. They have wonderful taste. Be sure to join us next week here at the LAOFCS Weekly show. We're going to be talking about John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum. They put that word in the title just so you look up what parabellum means. Maybe A Dog's Journey, The Sun is Also a Star, The Souvenir, Trial by Fire, any one of those, any combination of those. Until then, thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire Popcorn Talk Network, we would like to thank you for tuning in. For questions or comments, be sure to visit popcorntalk.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of the Popcorn Talk Network.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Popcorn Talk Network or its owners or principals.